Recording 12. I'm still at the train station. I didn't leave after the footsteps last recording. I stayed until I was confident the platform was empty, and then I went back. I needed to read the rest of O'Connor's journal, and I needed to find where those footsteps came from. What I'm documenting now happened over the past 4 hours. I'm recording it in order because the order matters. The footsteps were coming from the far end of the platform, near the last of the 3 sets of train cars. After I cut the previous recording, I waited approximately 10 minutes without moving. The sound didn't repeat. I swept the platform with the flashlight from end to end. Nothing. The train car doors were open the same way they'd been when I arrived. No new disturbance visible. I made a decision that I want to document because it surprised me. I didn't leave. The reasonable response to unexplained footsteps in an empty building would be to exit and return another time. I didn't do that. I went further in. I'm noting this because it's the same pattern O'Connor describes in the 1921 section of his journal, the pull he refers to as the investigation's own momentum. He writes that once a certain threshold of engagement is crossed, leaving feels less like caution and more like abandonment. I read that passage hours after I made my own decision, and I recognized it. Whatever the archive does to the people inside it, it was already doing it to investigators in 1921. I went back to the mechanical room and read the rest of the journal. The 1923 entries. July 3rd, 1923. O'Connor's entry for that date is the longest single entry in the journal, 4 pages. His handwriting slightly less controlled than the earlier entries, as though written quickly or under some agitation. He describes a meeting at the train station, in the area of the maintenance corridor, with an individual he has encountered several times before. He doesn't give the individual a name or a clear physical description. He refers to them only as my correspondent, and notes that previous meetings have also occurred at this location. The meetings are not chance encounters, they are arranged. His correspondent leaves signals in the station's exterior crescent markers to indicate timing. He describes his correspondent's appearance as consistent across visits, but difficult to retain in memory afterward. I note the meeting, but find the specific features have withdrawn by the time I reach the page. That phrase stopped me. He knows this is happening to him. He's documenting the mechanism of his own memory's compromise in real time, the same way I've been doing. The July 3rd meeting, according to the entry, concerned the sequence. His correspondent provided him with a set of alphanumeric coordinates. He writes them in the margin of the entry, separate from the main text, 7R23F-9T. No explanation of what the sequence refers to, no instructions for how to use it. His correspondent told him only that the sequence resolves at the primary grid, and that he should not attempt to locate its referent until both investigators are confirmed active, both investigators. The entry uses that phrase specifically. O'Connor notes he asked his correspondent what it meant and received no answer. I've written 7R23F-9T into my own notes now in 3 separate places. I don't want to forget it. The July 1923 entries continue through the 12th, the date of the fire. His entry for July 11th is brief, materials removed from the upper floor. His entry for July 12th reads only, "The building stands, the fire was contained as predicted, HTM was present, I was not." He doesn't elaborate on either of those last 2 sentences. Present in what capacity, not present why. HTM was present. He knew her. He knew her name before I ever found it in the newspaper. She appears in his records not as a stranger, but as a known quantity. HTM was present is the same construction as the fire was contained, a simple statement of expected fact, which means she was expected to be there. She was part of the plan, or she was known to be part of whatever was happening that night. The journal entries after July 1923 become sparse. One entry in November documenting a return visit to the station. 2 entries in 1924. Then nothing until 1927, a single entry about conditions at the station changing. Then 1931, the final entry, ending mid-sentence, the pen line trailing off the bottom of the page. I don't know what stopped him. I don't know if he stopped voluntarily or was stopped. After I finished reading, I sat in the mechanical room for a while with the journal, not recording, just thinking. The machine beside me was still running its low vibration. The device in my pocket had settled back to approximately 2 seconds, the standard interval for this building, by my experience. Whatever proximity effect was operating when I first arrived had stabilized. I noticed, while sitting there, that the metallic box on the shelf near the machine, not the drawer built into the machine itself, a separate box on the adjacent shelving unit, had been moved since I first entered the room. I'm certain it wasn't open when I came in. It was closed and positioned parallel to the shelf edge. Now it was angled and the lid was slightly raised. I hadn't touched it. I opened it. Inside, a folded piece of paper with a sequence written on it. Not in O'Connor's handwriting. Not in any handwriting I recognized. Clean block letters, no pen pressure variation, almost mechanical in their evenness. The sequence was 7R23F-9T, the same sequence O'Connor copied into his journal margin from his correspondence instructions. The same sequence. Someone placed this paper in this box after I arrived in the mechanical room. While I was reading the journal, the box was on the same shelf unit I was working at, within 6 feet of where I was sitting. I didn't hear anything. I didn't see anyone. I've been in this investigation long enough now that I can hold that fact without coming apart over it. I'm documenting it because it's evidence. Something placed confirming information in my path tonight, using a sequence that originated in a 1923 meeting between O'Connor and a correspondent whose features withdraw from memory. That is not coincidence. The alcove. Before I found the metallic box I had, in between reading the journal and noticing the box, followed the device's signal to a section of the station I hadn't yet accessed. I should document this in correct order. This happened before the box. The maintenance corridor has a branch point approximately halfway along its length that I'd passed without investigating on my first entry. I was following the device's signal directly to the mechanical room and didn't stop. On my second pass through the corridor, moving more slowly, I noticed the branch. The device interval decreased when I turned into it. The branch leads to a storage alcove, a wider section of corridor repurposed for materials storage, with shelving units along both walls and a low ceiling with wooden beam supports. The shelves hold items consistent with early to mid-20th century station maintenance. Parts, tools, documentation in deteriorating condition. The air here is drier than the mechanical room, which has preserved the materials better. The crescent symbols are cut into the wooden beam supports, not the stone walls. That's different from anything I've encountered before. The marks are older looking than the ones on the exterior of the building. The wood around the cuts has darkened and the grooves have collected decades of dust. These weren't placed recently. On the lowest shelf, behind a row of maintenance ledgers, I found a metallic box, smaller than the one in the mechanical room, cold to the touch. No markings on the exterior. I opened it. This was before I found the other box had been moved, so at this point I was still operating on normal investigative logic. Inside the small box, a folded paper with the sequence 7R23F9T in the same block lettering I later found in the other box. And underneath the paper, a folded map, hand-drawn, on the same heavy stock as the documents from 47 Marginal Road. The map shows a section of the train station in plan view, with a passage leading from the maintenance corridor into what appears to be a chamber below grade. The passage is marked, the chamber is marked, and the chamber is labeled in the same block lettering as the sequence, beneath point 0. There are tunnels beneath point 0, or there were. The map was drawn by someone who had been inside them. I found the entrance to the passage on the map. I want to be precise about what I found there because I only went a short distance in, and I need to document what I observed accurately. The passage entrance is accessed through a hatch in the alcove floor, partially obscured by a section of shelving that can be moved. The hatch opens downward onto a stone staircase, not a ladder, wide enough for one person, approximately 15 steps, descending to a chamber below. I went down the stairs and stood in the chamber for approximately 5 minutes. The chamber is stone throughout, walls, floor, ceiling, rough cut, not finished. Approximately the size of a large room, irregular in shape. There are several passages branching off from it, all unlit. The air is cold and still and carries a smell I can only describe as mineral. The smell of stone that hasn't been disturbed in a very long time. There is a reel-to-reel tape recorder in the center of the chamber, freestanding on a small table connected to nothing. Not a period piece. This is relatively recent equipment, probably from the 1970s or 1980s, not decades older like the station's infrastructure. Someone brought this down here and placed it deliberately. I pressed play. The recording is a conversation between two people. The audio quality is poor. Significant background noise, the voice is partially obscured. I can make out the following with reasonable certainty. The word .0 spoken several times. The phrase, "These anomalies cannot be corrected, only documented," and a longer passage I had to listen to 3 times before I could transcribe it. The passage is, "If the encoding fails, the record persists, but the person does not. The archive does not lose the document, it loses the witness. The archive does not lose the document, it loses the witness." I stood in that stone chamber in the dark and played that passage back 3 times, and each time it landed differently. The first time I heard it as a description of the memory alteration mechanism. The device erases the person's encoding of an event, just as O'Connor documented, so the archive's record persists, but the person's subjective experience is gone. The second time I heard it as something more specific, not just memory erasure, but actual erasure. A person can be removed, not just their memories. The third time I heard it, I didn't hear it as a description at all. I heard it as a warning. I don't know which interpretation is correct. I wrote down all 3. The journal entries in the underground chamber shift. I need to document this carefully because it's the most direct evidence of archive behavior I've personally witnessed, and I want to be precise. There were 2 journals on the table beside the tape recorder. I picked up the first one and read the opening page. The text was clear. A set of observations about the chamber's construction, written in a hand I didn't recognize, dated 1947. I read the first 3 pages. I set the journal down to replay a section of the tape. This took approximately 2 minutes. I picked the journal back up. The opening page was different. My first instinct was to doubt myself. I reread the page slowly, the way I read the first time, and then I opened my notes and read what I had written during the first reading, and then I read the journal again. I did this 3 times before I was willing to commit to what I was seeing. The date was the same. The handwriting was the same. I checked the specific letter forms, the way the writer formed their lowercase a, the length of the descenders on the G and Y. Same hand, same pen, same paper. The subject was the same, the construction and dimensions of the chamber. But specific words had changed, and the changes were not random. Where the first reading had said, "The chamber was constructed before the station above it," the second reading said, "The chamber predates all structures above." The meaning is similar, but not identical. Constructed before implies a known sequence of events. Predates all structures implies something older than the investigator could confirm. The revision softened a claim. Where the first reading had given a specific measurement, I wrote it in my notes verbatim, approximately 40 feet in its longest dimension. The second reading gave no measurement at all. The sentence that had contained the measurement now read, "The chamber extends further than expected." The number had been removed. replaced with a phrase that gestures at size without providing one. I went through the first 3 pages line by line against my notes, 4 changes total. In every case, the revision moved away from specificity. A named measurement became an approximation. A confirmed sequence became a relative statement. A detail I could verify became one I could not. The journal was not being rewritten wholesale. It was being made less useful, selectively, precisely, while I was in the same room. I'm not misremembering the first reading. The notes exist. The journal now contradicts them. The archive is revising, not between visits, between readings, within a single session, in a chamber below a decommissioned train station, while I sat 2 feet away. Whatever process alters these documents was operating in real time. I watched it happen without seeing it happen. I took the journals with me when I left, both of them. They're in my bag now, and I'm not going to put them down. I came back up through the hatch, back through the alcove, back to the platform. The station is quiet. The device is at 2 seconds. I have O'Connor's journal, the map, the 2 underground journals, the paper with the sequence, and a recording on a tape player I couldn't carry out. I'm going back to 47 Marginal Road. The sequence 7R23F9T resolves at the primary grid, according to O'Connor's correspondent. The grid map is there. I need to find out what coordinate that sequence points to. And I need to find out whether Hannah Morrison's name appears anywhere in O'Connor's documentation beyond that single July 12th line. I'm going to leave the station now. I'm going to